helped over 1 million anglers and somehow got bass fishermen to care about data science?
Over an 8-year period, we didn't spend that much money either. We did do some advertising, high 5, low 6 figures. Promoting the product was helpful in reaching that top 5 sports app, providing anything relevant to the experience that keeps people engaged and not just gamify it. You hire the best people to do the job, but if you understand the market and try to really help people, then the rest will follow.
If you were to start over, no users at all, what would be the first thing you would do?
As an entrepreneur,
Hey, are you Mike Mehlmann, the guy that turned Fishing Forecast into a top 5 sports app, helped over 1 million anglers, and somehow got bass fishermen to care about data science?
I am. Wow, I didn't know that I was that famous.
Incredible. Mike, thanks so much for answering. I'm here scouting out my next bass fishing spot and was just scrolling through the app store trying to find a fishing app. Found BassForecast and was like, I'm just going to call you directly and ask you about this. I got so intrigued by the story of kind of how you started this, so would love to get the background of what inspired this to come to fruition and how have you taken it to where it is now from there.
Yeah, well, where you're standing right now is a case study of why we wanted to start BassForecast. Yesterday or last week, that might not have been flooded, but you have to adapt to current conditions, right?
I would have known.
So what our app does is it helps you avoid situations like that. It looks like you'd have a hard time bringing a bass through that fence right there.
Sure would.
10 years ago, before I started this, the way that people would try to use their valuable free time is just guess as good as they could, trying to cherry pick the best days to go fishing. And it's a very inexact science, and it's a very high value proposition, right? Now, some people can fish every weekend, but either way, knowing the mood of the fish is really important. And there were only generic fishing forecasts, right? And back then, bass are warm-blooded, trout are cold-blooded. You won't find them in the same waters. You won't find them acting the same depending on the weather. For people that don't fish a lot, it's a simple analogy is, would you find polar bears and alligators in the same places? No.
Why not?
No. So we were the first company to really put a scientific formula to just targeting bass. You know, helping anglers understand the mood of the fish on the day. And if they can do that far enough in advance, there's a lot of ways they can use that. They can, if you can know 7 to 10 days, which is about as far out as you can go with any accuracy on weather, it can either help you pick a better day, or if you're going to go anyway, understand that those fish are going to be moving fast or moving slow, or they're going to be shallow or deep based on some serious actual science and real-time weather.
Right.
That's
so
what we do.
You guys were able to hit the top 5 in the entire sports category, which is just insane. With all the major brands out there, how were you able to get it to that point? And what do you think actually clicked with the users?
You know, that's funny, Nick. We really didn't try that hard. We didn't spend that much money either. It just, we struck a chord. We met an unmet need. You know, last I looked, there were 45,800 sports apps. So yeah, number 5 out of 45,000 is pretty good. We struck an unmet need. Most of the products in the industry all address what happened yesterday. Or they crowdsource, and, you know, everyone lies. You know, fishermen are. When their mouth is talking, they're lying. There was really no good place for people to go to help them plan better trips, to help them get more use out of their valuable free time. And so I think we really struck a chord by meeting an unmet need. And I didn't go into this thinking about making a ton of money. In fact, I was working a full-time job and had a great career.
Yeah.
I just went into it thinking, I would love this myself. This solves a huge problem.
That's how it starts. Insane. Yeah. So you were working a full-time job. When you were growing this, when did you actually hit that moment where you're like, we're actually doing this, we're onto something here? What was that moment like?
When our app developer said to me, Mike, we develop apps for Nike, Under Armour, NASA, AccuWeather. Your numbers in terms of retention, the number of reviews you're getting per 1,000 users is the best we've ever seen.
For a bass fishing app.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
We also know that people that start apps who understand the market and they're subject matter experts are much more likely to succeed than a techie who's going to just try to see green and have 100 different apps and think because they're a techie, they can build a great app. Doesn't matter if what the app doesn't solve a need.
Right.
Our app solved a very basic unmet need, and I think that's why. It's as simple as I can make it. Then we hired the best people in tech part. I mean, we could.
Right.
You know, you hire the best people to do the job, but if you understand the market and try to really help people, then the rest will follow.
The rest will take care of itself. Insane.
Yeah.
Since then, you guys have served over 1 million anglers. What is like the total number at this point of bass fishermen that you?
Well, we had 1.5 million installs. We have about 500,000 highly active, which over an 8-year period is a pretty good number. Because what happens is, Nick, a lot of people will stop fishing for a year or two. Maybe they had kids and they couldn't fish. And then they reinstall us. Our reinstall rate is insane. It's like 25% a year.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you take that 1.5 million over 7 or 8 years, and then we got 500,000, we've had very few people who leave and don't come back. They come back. Most of them come back.
Interesting. So with an app like bass fishing, how do you create a sticky product? How do you bring, even if they're not fishing, how do you continue to bring them back onto the app?
My product dev guy and chief technical officer always like to talk about that. How do we create stickiness? We are continually trying to offer more value in the app. Like, and at first it was just getting the rating. Then it was understanding how the mood rating and the bass season can affect how you should fish, where you should fish, what lures you should use.
Right.
You know, like in that body of water behind you, if you have a hope of catching a bass right now, understanding that you need to use probably in a flooded condition like that in the early summer, you need to fish closer to the bank, things like that.
Right.
And then also providing anything relevant to the experience that keeps people engaged and not just gamify. I mean, gamify is cutesy, but providing real value to the experience.
That'll always win. So what did user acquisition look like early on, and what does it look like now? Was it a lot of content, community? Was it partnerships? Was it advertising? What did that look like?
You know, it was a lot easier prior to March of 2021.
Right.
You worked with enough apps to probably know what I'm going to say next. And my background is media, marketing, advertising.
Right.
It's the single biggest adjustment ever in an advertising market, where ad rates on Google, Apple, and Facebook quintupled in about an 18-month period beginning March of 2021. You know, March of 2020, COVID hit. I mean, it hit February, but it really became a pandemic in March. Mm-hmm. Perfect timing for the bass fishing season. People were getting out about. Demand skyrocketed for our services, yet competition was light because companies were a little bit frozen. You know, they weren't really,
right.
They were in rigor mortis. They were shocked. And as they began to realize throughout April, May, June, hey, we have to do something about this. We have to get more competitive with digital. And, the whole transformation from brick and mortar to online occurred and really settled in took about a year. So March of 2021, we saw our customer acquisition costs start to creep up. But you're creeping up 2-3% every week. And cumulative, after it probably took 12 to 18 months. We looked at it and said, holy cow, our cost to get a customer, Google, Apple, and Facebook has tripled in 18 months.
Not ideal.
And I ran that scenario through a couple of large language models. I like ChatGPT 4.0, and it said, yeah, this was the case for pretty much everyone. So Classic case of limited supply product, right? The amount of inventory Facebook has. You have a limited supply product and demand shoots through the roof. What goes? It's an inelastic supply curve, right? So prices went up with demand. And that's been the hardest thing for us and a lot of companies to swallow.
Right. So, Mike, you've worked in sales and marketing for years, obviously. How did those skills translate over to BassForecast?
Well, I think sales and marketing is not. First of all, if you don't believe in what you're selling in marketing, you shouldn't be in it. Product development is a big part of marketing because understanding what the market wants and needs and then producing that product should never be siloed. It's a continuous flow, right, from one department to the other. So I guess my background then in actually promoting the product once we had it, it was helpful in reaching that top 5 sports app, because we did do some advertising, but we did, maybe high 5, low 6 figures. And to reach that level of ranking in any category, let alone sports, most companies would have to spend millions.
Oh, absolutely.
I can tell you, we didn't have that money to spend.
What was your organic traction like? Were people coming in through ASO, through other content methods?
It was okay back then, but we were still relatively unknown.
Right.
A lot better now. Our web traffic has blown up from, the numbers that our web team showed me the other day is we're getting close to, we're slightly over now, 500,000 unique website visitors a month. Wow. And a year ago, it was like 150,000. A lot of our, we've been wise to gather email addresses and we publish content, right? We publish report of how the weather is going to affect the fishing. So we also email our customers the weekend report on a Thursday. That email has been incredible. It has over 50% read rate. So we have the number one read bass fishing newsletter in the industry.
Okay,
right
well, that helps.
We republish that content on our website. I tell you, our marketing and dev team has done a really good job there. When they first told me they were going to do it, I was like, you're going to do what? But now our website has a ton of great content on it.
It can be good content. Love it. So
Yeah.
I guess if you were to start over from, let's say you started over today, no users at all, just based on what you know now, based on how the market is now compared to how it was back in 2015, what would be the first thing you would do today to get users?
First thing I would do to get users,
To get
or to
users.
keep them, or to get them to subscribe. Those are three different questions. Just to get users?
Let's say just to get users, and let's say to subscribe as well.
I think realizing real early to create content, because the advertising play market is so volatile. As an entrepreneur used to buying traditional media, TV, newspaper, radio, seeing a price increase of more than 5% a year is like, whoa, wait a minute, And it's easy to build a business when you say it costs me, let's say $2 to get a customer and I make $10. So my cost of sales is 20%. And next year I'm going to budget, it's going to cost me $2.50.
Right.
But what if you're spending $2 to get a $10 customer and your price now quintuples in 18 months because Google, Apple, Facebook demand has gone through the roof?
Yep.
So because you can't control, it's better to take control of your own destiny and make sure that you have as much organic content, your SEO is optimized to insulate yourself against. You probably use influencers more. You see that now at these fishing industry shows, influencer that might have a couple thousand views and followers, but he or she is on the rise. All these big brands are just throwing stuff at him. We want you. I'm going to give you 3 free pairs of sunglasses. Here's a free bass boat. I'm like, wow. I think the big brands realize that's where the market's going. Content influencers, an army of influencers, and not relying on ads, right. Google, App, Facebook, right. YouTube, etc.
Absolutely. So last question, what piece of advice would you give to, let's say, a newer founder that's in a very niche market like fishing?
Kind of advice. I think probably the same advice I gave to myself. If you have a good product meeting needs, this is not a single source market. Fishing products like our potato chips, you can't eat just one, right? We're not selling copiers here. So it's funny, people that don't understand that, sometimes I hear, well, who are your competitors? Are they going to put you out of business? How many different fishing lures do you have? How many weather apps do you have? Most of our customers have 4, 5, 6 weather apps. That's right.
It's a lot of weather apps.
How many do you have?
I think one. I think I just use the main one on my.
Oh, well, you're an anomaly.
I'm a simple man.
So I think if you have a good product and a good execution, and it meets a need and it's fairly priced, or etc., don't let the naysayers keep you from doing it. At the same time, keep your eyes open and get advice.
Beware.
Don't swim against the fast flowing stream like the one behind you. But there's a lot of Chicken Littles out there, but most of them are running successful businesses. And even those that sometimes are, they misinterpret markets.
Okay.
That's how come sometimes even sophisticated investors make huge errors and lose money because they don't understand the nuances. Yeah. I met with a guy in the venture capital market about a year ago, and he says, well, because we're constantly raising capital just like every other company that's growing. You're just bass fishing. If you were off fishing, I'd be more interested. I said, let me ask you something. Would you be interested in completely dominating the skiing and snowboarding market? He goes, yeah. I go, how about golf? He goes, oh man, heck. We got like 8 golf investments. I go, do you know there's more people that bass fish once a month than golf? He goes, really? So, and there's more money spent in bass fishing than skiing and snowboarding combined.
Really?
So, of course, he went, it didn't sound right to him. So he double checked everything and he called me back and he said, yeah, you're right. It's about 30% more in both instances.
I had no idea.
I said, then bass fishing in and of itself is a huge industry. This particular venture capitalist, so I'm not going to refer to by name, is the largest in the emerging sports market. So how can the largest in an emerging sports market have that sort of misperception?
I know.
Well, it happens, right?
It does.
So know your market, have confidence. I'm not saying be cocky, but I have a good relationship with this guy now that he understands the market. But You get an investor like that gets too involved in your business and they could distract you. One of the things that's been real good for us is focusing on bass, and that's why our customers like us. Had I been a 22-year-old, didn't know squat or didn't have confidence, I might have taken that investment money and let him make us into another generic app that's for all species of fish, and we would have lost our edge of being the leading experts in bass.
That's a good point. That kind of leads to my final.
There's a time to take advice, and there's a time to stay the course.
Interesting. I love that, Mike. That was actually my last question. I was going to ask what's next for BassForecast. Is it more features, bigger audience, something totally new? Keep doing what you're doing? What's happening?
Absolutely. We're just like everyone says this, but we're actually doing it aggressively, deploying AI. We're going to be offering more features. Absolutely.
Amazing. Well, I can't wait to put it to good use, and I'll have to send you a picture once I reel in the largest bass that's ever come out of the Cumberland River.
Is that the river back there?
Yes, sir. The Cumberland, you can see a Titan Stadium across. I'm just scouting it out. I'll have to go find a nice little pond as well, but we'll see what happens.
Thanks, Nick. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Mike. Really